and welcome to the Show to Be Named Later podcast. I'm Jonny Voss along with my good friend
Noah Stoerzinger. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. And we have a lot on our plate tonight. As of right now, it is the week that the Wolves are clinging to any kind of hope at all. The Minnesota Wild are still in it. The Minnesota Twins are kind of up and down a little bit, more up than down. I don't think that we've even touched upon Minnesota United soccer yet, but that's okay. So basically, maybe I did a poor job before. This is our third podcast, and maybe just give you a little background about why we're doing this. About 20 years ago, I had the pleasure of being able to host a sports show. I'm not a journalist at all. I took 1 year of journalism class in college of the 7 years that I was in school, and switched my major. But as I was teaching about 20 years ago, a buddy of mine came up with the idea of doing this show where it wasn't professional journalists covering the teams that we love, a very kind of grassroots Wayne's World, if you will. And so we started on public access back when people still watch public access. Had a few shows there, and then we were picked up by KARE 11. And for one year, we had the show to be named later on KARE 11. Could not make any money doing that show. That was right around the time that TiVo came out. So, if you're trying to sell advertising to different places, it just anyways, long story short, I've been watching my Minnesota teams now going on 45 years. That's my escape. Some people jump out of an airplane for it. Some people snort it up their nose. Some people play video games. I watch Minnesota sports to get away from everything else that drives me nuts about this world. And so basically I'm giving you this idea. I had a buddy of mine the other day that said, gee, man, you guys talk a lot of sports on your podcast. And I'll tell you why. The first reason was I just gave you, but the second reason is because our name isn't Tucker Carlson or Don Lemon. We're not going to get fired from this. We're just going to keep talking sports. Okay. So that's what we're all about. Maybe we will talk, about, I don't know, we'll talk about the price of tea in China someday. But as of right now, all we're doing is talking Minnesota sports, sports at a national level as well, because you can't forget about that. But that's pretty much what this podcast is all about. So, and yes, Ozzy, there will be a lot of baseball talk. So there you go.
Love that. Perfect. And I think that's what makes this show cool is we're, like you said, it's not journalists talking sports. It's just real fans. And I think that's the best view of sports you can get is just real fans talking at it. You're not getting the journalist view.
Well, and I think the reason, I do still read a lot of the Minnesota, the Star Tribune. And I know I'm a fossil. I even got ridiculed the other day. I was at a restaurant by myself eating my lunch, and a guy came right up to and I didn't know people still read the newspaper any longer. And yep, I know that. But when I read those guys, and I don't mind Barrero, although I've got a great story about him. Patrick Royce, Lavelli Neal. It's a different way than watching it on your phone or watching. Well, I don't even watch SportsCenter any longer because it's non-existent. It's like MTV. They don't even play music videos any longer. But when I read those guys, and they've been covering our teams for a long time, and they talk with some passion about being a Minnesota fan, but a lot of those guys aren't from here, and they don't have the same passion that I think Noah and myself and anybody else that comes on the show is going to have. So that gives you just kind of a different perspective, in my opinion. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think you'll just see a lot of even just the beat writers that are covering the Twins, the Wild, the Timberwolves, whatever. And like, oh yeah, they used to cover for the Angels or they used to cover for the Mavericks. And it's like, right. I don't know if I mean, that's fine. And I'm sure you'll still be passionate and whatnot, but I don't know if you're going to get the same thing that maybe I would have put out compared to someone that maybe grew up in Miami or.
Right. And that's interesting that you bring that up, because after the show to be named later got canceled on Carol 11, I took a meeting out in Los Angeles, and there was talk about doing the same thing at a national level. And I really questioned myself because I've got opinions about everything that's going on in the sports world. But my passion is truly with my home teams. Okay. And so that was a question. Would I really try to do something at a national level? I don't think it would be the same thing, honestly. And so I think what we're trying to accomplish on this podcast is Minnesota sports. If you're into Minnesota sports, that's what we're going to talk about. And we're going to give you our opinion, whether you like it or not. And that's what's cool about a podcast is just like Michael Jackson's music, man, you can turn it off if you don't want to. You don't got to cancel it. You just turn it off. So there you go. Should we get right into it, bud?
Good. Let's go.
All right. First thing I was going to bring up now, I was very excited and thought that I was Mr. Fortune Teller this weekend because I think we made some predictions last podcast. I said the Twins were only going to win one of three in Boston, and that did come true. I believe I was very animate about the Wolves not going to win one game in this Denver series, and I still think that's what happened. I don't think we really won on Sunday, but they're playing tonight, so there you go. And then the other one was that the Wild would win a playoff series before any other team in Minnesota, and I was so sure on Sunday that the Wild were going to take a commanding 3-1 lead. Didn't happen that way. We might touch upon the Minnesota Wild and hockey, even though Noah and I cannot skate. But I think we'll touch upon that. And so for predictions, I was pretty excited. But you can see at the drop of a hat, things can change that quickly. What do you think?
Well, absolutely. And I think, with the Wild, I think, I can't remember what game it was, but game 2 that, the Stars took a commanding lead, and it felt like we jumped back into it and then immediately changed again.
Can I tell you why?
Yeah.
They did this stuff last year, and it reminded me of all the Vikings teams in the 90s where you would get a player who was an absolute stud after they were on Social Security. Okay. Like I'm talking about like guys like Warren Moon that were really, really good football players, but not by the time they got to the Vikings. And so with Flower, with Fleury, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer automatically. But what they did was they brought him in last year and they really screwed the goalie that we had, who was playing very, very hot at the time that they went into the series against St. Louis. And they said, well, we've got this future Hall of Famer who really already last year he was a step behind, and they played him. And then by the time that they went to I can't remember his name now. It's so forgettable. He left shortly after. We were already down 3-2. It was too late by that time to bring him in. You wouldn't ask anybody to come in that situation. Now, the reason I bring that up is because they've been doing this all year with Gussie and Fleury. They've been rotating them back every night. There was a different goalie in net. However, after a guy has 51 saves in game 1, I don't care how much of a Hall of Famer he is. I don't care if you are paying him $500 million to play. You go with what's hot, right? And I know that a coach said, okay, we've been doing this all year, so we have to follow the same pattern, but it didn't switch up Dallas at all. It didn't throw him a curve at all. And they came out and it wasn't even like, oh, we lost barely. He gave up 7 goals. And so to me, I was like, it's typical Minnesota. We're right back to go again. What happened? Gustafson comes back in game 3, not an issue. Game 4, probably should have won, got some questionable penalty calls. Our penalty killing has not been good this series. And that was kind of the downfall. But I'm telling you, man, he better be back in net tonight because I don't want to see Fleury. I don't think for the rest of the season, maybe his career.
No, and honestly, I feel like that's what is a consistent trend among Minnesota sports is the regular season and the playoffs are two different animals.
Thank you.
the Minnesota sports treat them the same. And I mean, even Austin Rivers talked about it on the last game that the Wolves won, is the regular season is far different than the playoffs, and the Wolves were treating it, like a regular season series. And it's an animal, man. Like I get it if you've done this.
It's a completely different game. It is Absolutely. A completely different game. And that was kind of what I was talking about, the penalties. Foligno got 2 calls that, not in playoff hockey, those are not penalties. And everyone knows it goes up a notch. But then you got guys in the Wolves organization after game 1 in Denver said, well, we treated this game like it was a regular season game, which has been the knock. I've said it before. It was the knock against this team all year, that they just can't get motivated to play. Well, I'm sorry, man. That's unacceptable. And that brings me to my first point, that I wanted to compare watching a game 1 of the Minnesota Timberwolves and watching a game 1 of the Minnesota Wild. The Minnesota Wild in game 1 were beating every 50-50 puck. They were beating the Dallas Stars, okay? There was so much more energy watching that team play. And then you watch the Timberwolves, and they're just kind of slow motion right through the game. It was like apples to oranges. You couldn't even compare the 2 teams, much less get excited for one of the teams.
Exactly. And I don't know why, again, my optimist brain was like, oh, they'll come out firing, but I forgot that they had just played OKC. But I even think about last year when the Wolves played the Clippers in that play-in game. That felt like a different team, and they treated it completely different. They fought hard, but it was a completely different team this time around, which I couldn't understand.
I agree, and I don't understand why professional basketball players need motivation to play in the playoffs. And let me just share this with you. The Minnesota Timberwolves are not guaranteed. It doesn't matter. I think eventually it's going to be like the NCAA tournament where everybody makes the playoffs. But the Wolves are not a guaranteed playoff team, far and above. Okay. And so I don't know what kind of motivation you need. What, because you had to play 2 play-in games? You can't find it. You're without 2 of your stars. You can't find it. I struggle with that, because I don't know if you check the ticket prices at Target Center these days, or the salaries that go along with this team, but you're going to tell me that you can't get motivated to play in the playoffs against the number 1 seed in the Western Conference that has the 2-time defending MVP of the league on their roster? What am I missing? What am I missing here?
I think for whatever reason, the Wolves went 2-2 against this team during the season. Partially, I think they took them lightly.
Okay. However, and this is what I think you're going to find out tonight, the Wolves, I believe, are 0-4 in Denver this year. And the average margin of victory for the Nuggets, 19 points. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be negative tonight, because I don't even know what we're doing playing tonight. But I don't think it's going to go. I think this is going to be a game where you understand right away in the first quarter, this game's done. And I think it's going to be 20+ loss tonight for sure.
Well, I think Denver's a 14-point favorite already. So, right. I mean, every home team, I think right now is a favorite. But yeah, now let's before we switch over, let's continue our predictions. What's your prediction for the Wild series here?
I'm still going to hold fast, because I think that they're going to steal one tonight, and I think they're going to wrap it up in St. Paul. If it does go to 7, which I find funny, because I think Sunday night at Target Center, the crowd at the end of the game was chanting "Wolves in 7, Wolves in 7." Anyway, here's the thing. My prediction is, if the Wild win tonight, I think they win the series. Even if they lose tonight, I don't think that they necessarily are out, but I believe that the Wild are going to beat Dallas. And if they do, I'm going to go out on a limb here, Noah, and I'm going to say they win their next series too.
Well, I mean, it's already 2-2. You got the 7th seed tied with Colorado. So I mean, there's a chance that Seattle gets through there, and I think that's an easy series win then for the Wild.
I've got to say this because I don't hear you talk much hockey, and I'm trying to get you into it because hockey is there are such great storylines right now just with this Minnesota Wild team. You know, we talked about Gustafsson versus Fleury, talked about Foligno is a stud, dude. He is an absolute stud, man. But here's another thing. Brock Faber, I don't know if you know anything about this kid. So just a few weeks ago, he was playing on a national championship. Well, they lost the national championship, but he was playing on the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers in the NCAA championship game. And only a few weeks later, he's making a game saving block with his stick in game 1. You know, where like I read this article this morning about how his buddies, they're still living in the house that he was just in a few weeks ago. He's living in a hotel now because he's a pro hockey player. And the different, like, and to me, that's more hometown stuff than anything else. When you've got a home, you know, now you do know that Dallas's goaltender is from Lakeville, I believe.
Yep.
So screw him. I don't know how else to say it. The guy's been good. The guy has been good for Dallas.
Absolutely.
I think we can get to him, and I do. I'm going to say, normally the Vikings win a playoff game. I don't have much faith that they're going to go on from there. Okay, it's just history. The Twins, we got to get to another series before we can say anything, so that's not a factor. And I would say that with the Wolves, how many playoff series have they been in, and how many have they won? 2 playoff series wins in the history of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Oh, and why is John negative? I don't know. Okay. And those 2 were in the same year, by the way, the year that they went to the Western Conference Finals in 2004. So anyways, that's my prediction. Do you have one off the press that you know, hot off the press that you want to share? Because the Wild isn't the only prediction. I think we all know where I stand with the Wolves. I don't think we're going to see them play another game. If they do, then I would say that's kind of magical. If they get 6 games out of this series, I'll say this year was somewhat successful, even though it was crap.
Yeah, I mean, hockey, I still think, like you said, I think if they can win today, the Wild, I do think that they pull it off, whether it be 6 or 7. If they lose, I think you shift the momentum a little bit. But I do think that they can come out on top and move on. But for the Wolves, like I said in the last podcast, I said Nuggets would win in 6. I had thought that they could steal one in Denver, at least for this game 5, until I found out that Kyle Anderson won't be playing because of my injury. I think losing Kyle, losing Naz Reid, losing Jaden, unless Edwards is going to give you 50, and the guy's been insane.
Yeah,
I don't see a scenario where they win this game, and maybe I'll be surprised. And like you said, it would be magical if they could get 6.
I agree. And who knows? You come home, and who knows? I don't see that. I guess let's just get into the Wolves right now. I was disappointed when I heard Slow Mo's out. You know, he struggled most of the series. I'm still having trouble with Jaden McDaniels. All right. Now you've heard the whole his whole excuse, right? He didn't know that there was a brick wall behind the curtain. He was just going to try to punch the curtain. Now, my problem, to me, that makes him look more like a punk than anything else. Because how many guys do you know that get street cred? Like, nah, dude, he was so mad. He'd be so mad that he punched a curtain. Punched it. Oh, my goodness, what a tough guy. And, you know, he's the best defensive player that we have. So that might take away from someone like Jamal Murray. But he didn't get any bonus points with me that, the reason you broke your hand was because you did something stupid like punch a wall. But that was because he didn't know. How long you played in Target Center? Give me 2 weeks of playing on an NBA professional team, and I'll tell you where every freaking brick wall is in the building.
Yeah,
right?
and now I will say they changed up the tunnel entrance this year, so this was the first time they were exiting and entering through that side. But it was also the last game of the season, so you've been playing there for how long already? You should know what's behind the wall.
Well, but
But
that's my point, though. Are you a tough guy because you took on a curtain? And
I get it, and yeah, that's because I guarantee you, we've all when we got mad in sports, we've all done something stupid and punched a wall or broke a bat or whatever. But I don't know. It obviously would be a different story if there wasn't a brick wall behind and he just punched a curtain and he'd be D'ing up Jamal Murray right now. But
now I got a question for you. Did you hear this story? Because I was not aware of this. Did you hear that when Tibbs was the head coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves, that Calipari called him from Kentucky and said, "You have to take Jamal Murray. You have to." And you know who they went with?
they went with Chris Dunn, didn't they?
Chris Dunn.
Yeah.
Who is he? He's selling tires in Dubai right now, right?
Yeah. Well, I think he's
not even playing basketball, is he?
I don't think so. And if he is, he was playing G League this year.
Right.
But,
so it's just another. I can't believe I watched this team and think that they're ever going to be successful. When I heard that, I wasn't aware of that. And when I heard that, I was just like, man, that's like reason 87 for why it is so hard to watch this team. And
I know Jamal wanted to play with Towns really bad.
Right, you think?
Because I think Jamal went 5th right after Chris, or did he go 6th?
That I'm not sure of.
I think he went 5th, but I mean, granted, I will say Chris Dunn coming out of college looked great, good defensive guy for Providence, but I don't know. I can't really remember who was on the team at that time. If that was, I guess they're the same position, so position wise, it would have fit. But
we have had so many misses when it comes to the draft, where we had good spots in the draft, and in most of my early upbringing with this team, it'd be the worst team in the NBA, and they would never get the ping pong ball to go their way, right? So they'd miss out on Shaq, and they'd miss out on everybody. Yeah. But they've had chances like with Curry, Jamal Murray, and they always swing and miss. I mean, I can even go back to when we took Randy Foye over Brandon Roy, and Brandon Roy was incredible in Portland. And then, oh, by the way, we got him after his knee didn't work. Remember, it was bone on bone. And hey, bring him in. He change the scenery. He might do all right. Yeah. And it is so hard to watch this because I don't know basketball at that level at all. Yeah, I coached junior high basketball, played in high school, but I don't know basketball that way. And yet it feels sometimes, Noah, that we could sit in the war room and almost with a dartboard, you could shoot a dart at dartboards, pick any, and it would still be better than anything that the Wolves have done in the draft. I'm not going to bring up the 3-point guard draft. You remember that one with Rubio?
Yeah. Now, I'll throw a positive in there of I think the best draft the Wolves have ever had is 2020.
Okay.
Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, and you bring in Naz Reid.
Right.
That's insane.
Reid was undrafted.
You sign him, right?
Right.
All in that period. And I'll even say too, I was against drafting Walker Kessler this past season. I thought he would just be another big Mason Plumlee white guy. But
he's an absolute stud, man.
Yeah, so I'll give it to him. Now we traded him away for more stupid decisions. But I like the guys that they brought in this year too. Josh Minot, the lawnmower they call him. Start the lawnmower. I love it. And then Wendell Moore, I think is going to be a good role player. So I think recently,
how come my boy Garza doesn't get no minutes?
Well,
that guy, every time he's on the floor, he does something positive. They never give him minutes. And with Reid out, why does he not get any minutes? No,
because he's on a two-way deal, and two-way deals are ineligible for the playoffs.
I was talking before playoffs. You didn't see a lot of them down stretch time. You didn't.
Now I think they used, because you have a minimum number of games that you can play on a two-way deal. I'm not sure how many they used. If they used all of the games, so he was then ineligible to play. And I'll give it to you. Luka, I think, deserves a contract next season on this Wolves team.
Well,
But I
that
will
was going to
say,
be my next question. Do we let him fall through the wickets, so to speak, as the Wolves do sometimes, or will they take him seriously? Because I really like his game, man. And I mean, I watched not because I love Big Ten basketball or even the Gopher basketball team right now, but I watched a lot of his games in college, man, and he's a player.
he is, and I think his offensive game is good. I think the area that they didn't feel good with was his defense, and I will say his defense is shaky.
But he's pretty young though, man, and has not been. He doesn't. It's not like he gets to play every night, and that's going to bring me to my next point. Like, did you happen to see Jimmy Butler's game last night?
What did he get? Like 56.
56.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I bring him up is because besides this guy right here, and Jimmy Butler, can you name another Minnesota Timberwolf who was a true two-way player, offensively and defensively? I can't think of anybody.
Well, are you thinking star or just
in the history of the Wolves that could play both ends of the ball? And yeah, if you can play both ends of the ball really, really well, that would make you a star, don't you think?
Yeah, I'll give you that one. Honestly, no. But I will say this, and we'll go into this next point here, is I think Anthony Edwards could be that guy.
Right.
With Anthony Edwards' last couple games, I believe he's back-to-back games with 34 or more points in the playoffs against the number one seed.
Check this. You know this, right? He is second on the all-time list of 30-point games before he turns 22. Okay? Now, you know who number one is, obviously.
Right.
Can you name the other three that are below? He just passed somebody who has, I believe, 4. Edwards got 5 right now, right?
It was
you got
Carmelo on that list?
Nope. LeBron's got 8.
Yep.
Anthony Edwards got 5 now in only 10 games in the playoffs. He's only 21. And then there are 3 other guys who there's one guy that's got 4, and then 3 guys that had 3 30-point games in the playoffs by the time that before they were 22. One was a former Timberwolf.
Former Timberwolf, Kevin Garnett?
No, but he wasn't around for very long. I believe he did have a 50-point game one night, though.
I don't know. Who was it?
Derrick Rose, D. Rose.
Derrick Rose, yeah.
He had 3. Luka had 3. And Tracy McGrady had 3. Edwards just passed Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant had 4. And so that's something to me that's exciting because, like I say, a lot of Minnesota Timberwolves have never played in 5 playoff games by the time they were 22.
Right.
And I think that we were maybe hesitant when the playoffs started because Edwards did not look sharp. He'd been so banged up. Okay. But he came back and literally, a Kirby Puckett quote, "Jump on my back. I will try to lead you." But there's only so much that you can do as one player, Now, you compare that to Jimmy Buckets last night. That was one player doing everything, and that's why they won. And it's one of those things that sticks in my craw again because I always appreciated Jimmy Butler's game. I always thought he was fantastic. I was a little turned off by the way that he left, not because he wasn't saying anything that wasn't true, but we had this guy on our team. And can you imagine what this team would look like right now if Jimmy Butler was still a Minnesota Timberwolf? It's not even close, right?
Yeah, I think you look at the team would look completely different, right? Because you lose just when you traded him, Rocco Saric, which then led to Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt. I don't think you'd have Anthony Edwards on your team, but you would have Jimmy Butler. But if you were to have Jimmy Butler now or Anthony Edwards now on your team, what would you take?
I'm sorry, say that again.
If you were to have Jimmy Butler on your team right now, or Anthony Edwards on your team?
Edwards for sure. Edwards for sure. I mean, I heard that the Miami Heat are already talking about retiring Butler's number just because of last night. Maybe I don't know, but I mean, Butler is a competitor, but I think Edwards is the kind of player that you want. Certainly to start a franchise, if you were going to start, I would take him. But have you ever noticed that Anthony Edwards always says the right thing, and he calls out NBA players for being chachas? Okay, when he's only 21 years old, where Jimmy Butler calls guys out, but he's a chach himself. You don't sleep with the guy that you hate. Sleep with his girlfriend to get traded, because the first time you asked to be traded, you didn't get traded. So you're going to sleep with Karl Anthony Towns' girlfriend? Now you got to get
traded. That confirmed?
That was, well, I wasn't there holding the flashlight, Noah, but I'm pretty sure that was a deal. And that's what hurts that much, because he was talking about Wiggins and Towns, and he was right all the way across the board. But is he the kind of teammate? I mean, he's obviously the kind of player that you want on your team, because he brings that grit that most guys don't have. But is Jimmy Butler a team guy? And for me, Anthony Edwards is a team guy. Maybe he'll be an asshole when he's 26. I don't know. But I don't see that right now. And I think about where I was at 21. I was an asshole at 21. So I would definitely, hands down, 10 out of 10, I would take Edwards over Butler right now.
Well, I think the difference with Edwards, and it's been fun to watch him grow, just because I think he's been so mature, is because of who the Timberwolves have put around him and who his mentors have been throughout his years of growing, right? It wasn't just Karl Anthony Towns that was mentoring him, because if that was the case, I think he'd be a different player.
Right.
We look at, year one, he had Ricky Rubio, and then you give him Patrick Beverley. You've got Kyle Anderson, guys that are grinders. They'll be assholes occasionally. Patrick Beverley can be a dick sometimes.
Right.
But they play the game the right way, and they're showing him how to be a professional. And I think that's the difference.
And I think that the one thing is, I don't know. I think that Edwards will take the knowledge that is given to him by the veteran players that you're talking about. But a lot of the things that he talks about, I think, are his own opinion. When he talks about the league, and he talks about guys taking nights off, and he talks about lack of intensity, I think those are all Anthony Edwards. And, some guys at 30 years old might go, well, who is this upstart little punk who's talking? He's going to teach me about playing basketball. I think Edwards does give you that, where he's got a pretty good insight at 21 about what things are important when playing the game of basketball. And that's why I like him.
Yeah. And so final question then on Anthony Edwards. Will Anthony Edwards become a superstar? Well,
now, okay, because these two go hand in hand. I read an article today about, Karl Anthony Towns, they needed a guy that was going to stick with Jokic the entire game. And they're talking about in game 4. Mm-hmm. And in the writing is, and he did. I'm sorry, let me get this straight. Jokic had 43 points in game 4, and you're going to praise Towns for being his shadow? Well, I'm sorry, man. He played defense like he was a shadow. Okay. And so, no, I mean, and so to praise a guy like that, and I do not get this. No, I don't understand. Karl Anthony Towns has a physical, every matchup he has the advantage, a physical advantage. And what is he doing? He's settling for jump shots at the 3-point line, or he's going to drive and pick up his offensive foul. Okay, where he doesn't have a bad hook shot. He doesn't. And I don't understand, you have a hard time with the TNT crew. However, they're saying everything that everybody else has said, and all Towns does is go, why is everybody, why don't you just listen once to what everybody's saying and see if your game or your impact on the game is going to be better. And so here's the problem. Okay, I'm going to tie it up in a neat little package here. You're talking about Edwards being a superstar. I'm wondering if he's going to be a superstar, much less be a superstar in Minnesota, because here's the thing that everybody I think is overlooking that we've talked about before, but I'm going to keep saying it so that people aren't saying, "Oh, you're negative." No, I'm trying to teach as well. I'm a teacher. It's what I do. It's what I do. The next 5 years are going to be very interesting for the Wolves because I'm sorry, Towns' new contract just starts next year, right? Okay, a lot of money. Gobert is untradeable right now. A lot of money. You have no draft picks coming in for a long period of time. And so everyone I talked to has said, so do you just throw the bathwater out and you go and you tell Anthony Edwards, oh, by the way, Edwards is in line for a big contract very, very soon. So with no draft picks coming in, no extra money for free agents down the road, you pretty much got your core right now.
This is your window.
Huh?
This is their window right now.
So my point is that do you say to an Anthony Edwards, somehow you get a trade for Towns, which I don't think there are going to be any takers for that new contract that he's got next year, okay? No one, they're not going to be able to deal Gobert, and now you're going to sign Edwards for long-term, lots of money, and he's going to have no help, okay? So if you were to say we could somehow just tank it and get rid of all these guys and go, okay, for the next 3 or 4 years, it's going to be really tough, Mr. Edwards. But you know what? By the time you're 25, we're going to be a contender again. Would you stick around for that? Because guess what? Heard it with Wiggins, heard it with Towns, heard it with Kevin Love. All these things were always promised to Minnesota faithful, and they never came to fruition. And so if you were Anthony Edwards, would you go on history, or would you go, you know what? I want to stay here and I want to build this team like Garnett did. Would you hang around for it, though? Because I don't know if I would.
So I get what you're saying. If I had to guess, I do think Ant stays here. Because personally, now it's different when you talk about demanding a trade. But I mean, he's signing an extension. It's going to happen. Everyone of that rookie, the rookie extensions of people of his caliber, they always happen, and they always will, just because money talks. He will be in Minnesota past his 4-year contract, but you bring up a good point of if the team stagnates a little bit, is someone like him going to want to waste away his time in Minnesota?
And you're talking about early years too, 22, 23, 24. Maybe by the time you get to 26 or 27, we're going to put it back a contender. But sorry, I didn't mean to.
Well, no, and I think you look at, like, you brought up Towns and how he's treated in Minnesota, and while I do, I get your points quite a lot. I do think Towns is a good basketball player. And I do think he's mistreated by the media in Minnesota a little bit. But when you look at someone like D'Angelo Russell, okay, who was also not treated great by the media in Minnesota, granted, I think they had a point, goes to LA, and he is this absolute savior of the Lakers. If Towns goes somewhere, let's say Towns goes to New York, he goes to LA, do you think Towns becomes a completely different basketball player just because of how the media will treat him?
No. Oh, by the way that the media would treat him?
The game would be the same, but I'm saying the way the media frames it as, I think he would be viewed completely different as D'Angelo Russell was.
I don't think Karl Anthony Towns could handle being in the New York media circle. No way. All he does is complain whether he's on the court or he's off the court, okay? I don't know if you know how New York media is, but ain't even close to Minnesota. Like, we have used pretty much pillow soft gloves when it's come to Towns. I say time is done now. Mm-hmm. We need to actually demand more from the rookie of the year, the 3-point shootout king, I'm a superstar, blah, blah, blah. You ain't played like the second best player on the team. And now everybody is always talking about, well, is he going to be okay with it? It is Ant's team. And it's no longer, well, I don't know if it ever really was Cat's team, because when he was supposedly climbing to be in his prime, that's when guys like Jimmy Buckets was calling him out. So I don't know if he has done even close to enough to even be awarded the Timberwolves as his team. Okay. And that to me is going to be something, because I don't see Gobert and Towns playing like, I don't see him as the twin towers.
Yeah.
And so if I was Edwards, I would be like, why am I spinning my wheels here? Now, I will say this. To sign Edwards is just like Justin Jefferson with the Vikings. It's a no-brainer. You have to do it. And you have to give him the island of Jamaica. If that's what he wants, give it to him. Okay? You have to appease them to keep guys like that, because if the Vikings lose Jefferson, if the Wolves were to lose Edwards, you're talking about more fans taken off and not, because one of the only reasons I watch the Wolves right now is because of Anthony Edwards. That's it. And so I can't imagine. I mean, you're talking about the Al Jefferson years if we were to lose Edwards.
Right. All right. I think that's enough Wolves. What's your next point?
Okay. Let's go. You want to talk football? Since I did bring Jefferson up. Draft coming up Thursday night. I was wondering, I don't know how, like, you're more of an analytics guy, you're more a statistics guy than I am. I was just going to ask if you had any idea about who the Vikings were looking at drafting on Thursday night. And I know it's impossible to be able to figure that out, because you have to know what all the other teams are going to do 20 spots before you. But are they going to draft for need, or are they going to draft for need down the road? And what I mean about that is you got a pretty big matzo ball hanging out there right now with Kirk Cousins and the quarterback situation, because there is no heir apparent, and there's not anything close to an heir apparent, much less a guy that might come in if Cousins, God forbid, got injured, right? So are you going to take a quarterback in the first round? Like, apparently there's going to be like 18 of them going in the first round. Is what everyone's saying. Everyone's going to take a quarterback. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so I've seen a little bit of traction on an NFL rumor for the Vikings that they want to trade up to number 2 with the Houston Texans to draft a quarterback. Yeah, so not that I ever hear that, when people say, oh, it's happening, half the time it doesn't happen. I do think it's a little interesting. Could you guess who their target is?
Well, no, I was just going to say
their top guy.
Why would they move up to the number 2 spot?
Because I think they want a young quarterback to build around. Right. And the guy that I'm hearing is Will Levis from Kentucky.
Kentucky, I've heard that.
I don't know if you know much about him.
Nope. I've heard him as well. I don't know if that's, first of all, a doable thing. And I guess my question is, love him or hate him, I tend to steer towards the hate part of it. But it's really hard to have a negative argument about Kirk Cousins, because his stats are not just fantasy stat, at least last year. The knock was when he came here, I had Commander fans that I was friends with, and they said, you have any idea who you're getting? And I was like, yeah, a guy that you're going to take on your fantasy football team, which I no longer play anymore. So who gives, right? And they said, he's going to do great. You're going to get a guy who's going to throw for 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, but you're going to be down 5 touchdowns. So it doesn't matter. And he's going to throw for over 300 yards, and you're still going to lose the game. And they were all saying, I feel bad for you because we're so glad that he's out of Washington now. But I have to say that if you look at his stats, they were more than fantasy stats last year. It's hard to say that he didn't do what he was kind of supposed to do as the Vikings quarterback, maybe in the last 2 years. The thing is, Cousins is never going to be the guy that gets you a victory or gets you to the Super Bowl. He might be on a team with a lot of really talented guys, but he's not going to be that guy that's got the fire and like, wow, Kirk Cousins won that game hands down. No question about it. And he will never get to that level where he takes it to a different level or takes it up a notch, and he's one of the best people on the field. And that's why I don't think that they'll ever win with him. So my question is, let's say he has another year like he did last year. Vikings, let's say they even win a playoff game, but they don't make it to the NFC Championship game, but he's got this great statistical year. Vikings have somewhat success. Do you sign him again?
I just think the issue you're running into right now is I think he's a great quarterback, and I think that he helped you win a lot of games last year. And I mean, you got to credit him for that. But I think the hard part is that cap hit, and you're looking at like, imagine. I mean, if you remember the 2017 Vikings, who were throwing Case Keenum out there, quarterback who was on a small salary you could spend to get better people around you, right? So
but that's my question then. So do you draft a quarterback? And let's be honest, the last time we drafted a quarterback in the first round, they traded up to get the pick to get Christian Ponder, who most people know who his wife is more than they know who freaking Christian Ponder is. So I do have some hope with the guys that are in charge now, even more so than Zimmer for sure. But I guess that's my question. And then you go back and go, okay, well, we always need help in the secondary. One thing I was surprised by, did you see this? I think Saquon Barkley was the last running back taken in the top 10 of any NFL draft. And that's got to be how many years ago, right?
Right.
Everybody's going quarterback receivers nowadays. And as you see what Dalvin Cook's deal is right now, I was just talking to a friend of mine whose husband is on the Vikings coaching staff. And, even the guy's wife said running backs are, Cook's done probably. Yeah. I mean, we all knew that, but the window for NFL running backs are like this.
Yep.
And most people are going away from drafting a running back. Whereas I go, okay, but is Madison really going to give us the kind of games that Dalvin Cook has given us?
Do you need him to if Kirk is going to throw for what he did even last year?
It's a good question.
Because now you've given Kirk so many weapons with JJ. You've got Hawkinson. Who is the tight end?
Osborne's not bad either, man.
KJ, and then who they get from Baltimore? Oliver.
That I don't know.
They got some tight end.
I'll tell you. Oh yeah, but he's a blocking tight end. Really good blocking tight end. And here's the thing. I just read the article the other day where the KOC said, we really want to try to establish the running game this year. Well, are you going to do that with Madison? And, they put 2 years back on CJ Ham, which would tell me that is maybe something that they're going to look to this year. However, do you have the personnel that's going to back that up? And I think it is a pass first team, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Especially if Delvin's gone, which I feel like I read over and over that, he won't play, like he's not going to play next year. And I feel like come draft night, something will happen with Dalvin, whether he's, I don't know, in this trade for the number 2 pick or what. But I just think that last year was more pass heavy compared to the run. And I just think that you run with it, especially with the weapons that we have on the offensive side right now. Again, the knock on this team is the defense, and I think that's where they draft this year.
Okay. I'll tell you who I was pleased that they didn't pursue, and knock on wood that they don't do something draft night. There was some of the scuttlebutt was they might be interested in Lamar Jackson from Baltimore, and I do not want that guy as my quarterback, and I'm sorry. And it's got nothing to do. I think Lamar Jackson is an incredible athlete. How much has he won though? And does he
stay healthy too?
Right. And does his style, which is not, he's a run first, right? Is that style gonna? And don't get me started on that style of quarterback, because everybody gets so crazy about him, and for the most part, they don't win games, man. Or they don't win Super Bowls. And you can go right down the list. And Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, Michael Vick, Jalen Hurts is going to be pretty good. But you can't, what's his name from Chicago? I like him too. Yes. Those guys cannot take hits like that for a majority of their career, much less the majority of the season, and think that they're going to be healthy for the remainder of the season. And I'm sorry, I know that it's reinventing that position at quarterback, but those guys don't win Super Bowls. They just don't. And so to bring Lamar Jackson in, to me, would completely change the way the focus of this offense. It would completely turn it upside down. And then it'd be like, well, now we got Mike Conley. Now we just got to play a little catch up, and not going to happen. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think they abandoned, I don't want to say abandoned that idea, but I just think with the weapons that you have on offense, it just doesn't make sense.
No, you need a quarterback that's going to throw the ball accurately, right?
Because you've got Hawkinson, you've got JJ, KJ. I mean, it's too, like, you can't have them just running around blocking or running routes and just the ball's not getting to them, because they need the ball.
Right, I agree.
They need the ball.
Now, we do, because what are we doing for time here? We got time to talk yet?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how much time do we got here?
We're at 52 minutes.
Okay. Other football, no. You got an opinion about Aaron Rodgers? So they haven't officially announced it yet, right? But he's going to the Jets.
Well, they actually have announced it.
Oh, they did?
Yep, let me pull it up here. But I believe,
as of this morning, they had not. It was unofficial, but we knew that he's going to the Jets.
Gotcha. I don't know. Yeah, I guess if it was made official yet or not, but the trade package here was, I believe, that the Jets obviously get Aaron Rodgers, and they swapped first round picks. So the Packers get the 13th pick.
I believe
the 15th.
And what if Rodgers plays like 68% of the snaps or something, they might get a conditional draft pick in the future, second rounder, right?
So the Packers get the 13th overall pick, a second round pick, a 6th round pick, and then a conditional 2024 pick that becomes a first rounder if he plays 65% of the snaps.
Correct. Okay. I don't always think Aaron Rodgers is the sharpest tool in the drawer. You know what I mean? Like, but does he not know history? Like, I don't understand. First of all, going to the Jets. The Jets are terrible, as my friend Lou would always say. I don't see Aaron Rodgers doing, and to me, him going to the Jets after Favre did, that's like Hitler not doing his homework, like, oh, Napoleon tried to invade Russia. Hey, he didn't do so well, but let's try it. I think we really got it knocked down right now. I'm going to say, Aaron, put your phone away. Don't be taking pictures of anything and sending them to any women. You know that story, right? That Mr. Favre. Were you aware of that?
Right.
You do know
a little bit. Yep.
When he was with the Jets, he was sexting or sending pictures of his, of his Johnson to people that didn't want it, and that kind of was his deal. And then came to the Vikings, and it was great. If Rodgers fails in New York, I do not want him as a Minnesota Viking quarterback ever.
Do you think, do you see this playing out the same way? Like, could you see that legitimately being a scenario where he goes to the Jets for 2 years and then comes to the Vikings?
Do I? Well, nah. Do I see Aaron Rodgers working out and being happy in New York? Absolutely not. And I don't know if he'd be happy anywhere. I mean, all he did was complain about Green Bay doesn't give me the players to be successful. And then when he goes to New York, or everyone thinks he's going to New York, who did he recruit to go to the Jets? All former Packer players. So,
right.
But New York is tough, man. And not only is it tough to play there, their team sucks. And do I think that Aaron Rodgers is going to be the savior for the New York Jets football team? No, I don't. And I think he's going to be very frustrated and very quick to want to leave. Now, does that mean that he still wants to play and then suddenly we're going to see him in Las Vegas in 2 years or Minnesota? I don't know. I mean, Vikings are going to need a quarterback in 2 years. But I'll tell you what, I watched Favre so much as a Green Bay Packer, and when he came to the Vikings, I was just like, you know what? I'm okay with that, man, because Favre was a guy that I liked watch play, even if he was beating my team. You kind of had that respect for him. You know what I mean? Rodgers a good ball player, but I don't have respect for him in that way. And so I don't know. I might have to take a year of football off if he were to be a Minnesota Viking. I don't think I could watch him in purple. Couldn't do it.
Yeah. And I mean, I grew up watching Favre at the end of his career. So I didn't see a ton of Green Bay. Brett Favre, but I will say Aaron Rodgers, I don't like watching play football. I don't really respect the guy outside of the game with the off the field issues.
No.
It's just like, I don't know, because there are people that I don't like, and then they play for your team and you're like, okay, sure, I'll watch you. Rodgers, I don't know. And maybe my opinion would change in 2 years, but it's hard.
Right. And I'll give you an example. Like AJ Pierzynski. I think, did we talk about him before? Man, he was a guy that you probably even when he was on your team, you would go, God, he's got to be kind of a jerk, don't you think? And he was, but you loved having him on your team. Then when he did go to other teams, you'd just go, wow, that was such a jerk move. But you remembered, and you kind of had this idea of you know what? I still have that mutual respect for him. Aaron Rodgers, there's nothing about him that I have that mutual respect for, where I just go, gosh, he plays for the most hated team in the NFL. But like Favre did too, and I was still really okay with watching Brett Favre play football. So anyways, all right. Shifting gears. Minnesota Twins. Got to ask you a question. So they're going into their game tonight. It is Tuesday night. They have, I believe, out of 5 games, they've won 3 out of the 5 games against the Yankees, right? Correct?
As of right now, yep.
Okay.
They have won
3. So my deal is they win 1 of 2 games, and they win the season series, right?
Yep,
Has that ever happened since they were the Minnesota Twins, or did that only happen when they were in Washington? Because
I believe it happened once, and that was in 2001 or 2002. So I would have been either 1 or 2 years old. I feel like I have yet to see, even if the Twins were to win 1 more at home and win 2 out of 3 here, I feel like I've never seen the Twins win more than 2 games at Target Field against the Yankees.
Yeah, right.
So I just think it's a testament to not the offense, but the
Right.
pitching this year.
So does that give you now? And it's still early, and my problem, I think, I don't know if you and I talked about this, but I was like, man, playing the Yankees, in April, you ain't gonna see them until playoff time. And how do you know where the Yankees, what they're going to mature into, and if the Twins are going to dummy down, or if they're actually going to mature too? And so you'd like that litmus test of, yeah, we got a 3-game series with the Yankees in September. It might be a precursor for the playoffs. Gee, I'd like to see, because everyone in September is still fighting for position in the playoffs. Hopefully.
Mm.
It's too early to call in April, but do you have some kind of I don't know, hope that this is a different Twins team that might even be able to play with Big Brother?
I think now, again, it's early, but again, I've been watching this team for 20 years now, and it's like I don't know when we've played the Yankees this well. Now, even when the Yankees are rarely bad, but I know they had a couple, 1 or 2 maybe bad years back in 2017, 2018, and they still killed us, right?
Yep.
And
Right.
I don't know how this team will be, but this team has such a it's a well-rounded team, and I just think that there's a stigma around it that even good teams, I think, even if it's a good Minnesota team and we're playing against a team that the Yankees might not be good, we'd still lose. So I just think it's completely different, and I think it's exciting to see the Twins actually beating the New York Yankees.
I agree, but then we were talking about predictions earlier, and I thought, okay, one of when 1 and 2 in Boston come home, you got to have at least 2 against the Nationals, one of the worst teams in baseball, and their pitching is terrible, and nobody showed up, and so we got to get into this right now. And I know we talked about it before, but we do, because it's a major concern. When I was looking, and thank God that we got the win on Sunday, then we beat the Yankees to start out. That helps, but everybody talks about this starting rotation as something different, something that Twins fans have never seen, and I agree wholeheartedly. However, if you cannot score runs to complement that, because here's the other thing. I don't believe that the bullpen is as advertised, or at least what you and I talked about. We're like, this bullpen doesn't look bad, man. I'm not sold on Thielbar or Jax. I know Thielbar looked all right the other night. I'm not sold on those 2 individuals yet. Obviously, we saw what happened to Alcala, right? Is Pagan just one bad inning? Oh, wait, he's already had that. One bad inning away from just being sent outright. I mean, the bullpen is not looking that great right now. And here's the thing. You can praise and say how great we are with a starting rotation that we've got, which I believe that's only going to give up 1 or 2 runs here or there. But if you don't have 1 or 2 runs to match that, and you're going to then give that anointed game to the bullpen, I don't think the bullpen is going to be able to follow up or hold that. Even if you had a lead, or you're going to keep a lead, or you're going to go into extra innings, my money's on the other team every time, because I'm not sold on this bullpen right now.
Yeah, I think the bullpen is it's a tough one, right? I mean, outside of Jorge Lopez and Yohan Duran, I mean, there's a lot of question marks. Jax was coming in after a good year. I think he's got some amazing stuff. He's still young, man, and he's got some good stuff. I think he's going to be good. Caleb Thielbar, I'm surprised you're not sold on Thielbar. He's been phenomenal for the Twins the past couple of years. Good lefty out of the pen.
Makes me nervous, though, and I don't like that.
Now, the pieces that I'm just confused on is Emilio Pagan, who sits in the bullpen for he plays once every 4 games or something. If we're so worried about him, why is he on the team? If we're so worried about putting him in spots, please bring in someone who we trust a little more.
And they put him in a terrible spot with Maeda. And first of all, my hat's off. I salute Ken Maeda. That ball hit off his shin at 111 miles an hour. And he didn't care. Get the out, because that could have been a terrible inning had he not gotten that out. He put baseball first and got the throw. And then, you know, if that was Karl Anthony Towns, I think you'd see the flailing on the field. And obviously, anyways.
And he's pitching hard.
Right. They put Pagan in a bad situation, but you knew, right? Because he came in for a Maeda, right? And that's when the 5-run inning happened. No, he gave up 5 hits in a row. Yeah. And I looked at my buddy and I just said, were you expecting anything less? And I understand he didn't have the time to warm up. He didn't have the time to go, okay, I got to mentally wrap my brain around this, that I'm going to go into the game, because Maeda is supposed to go 5 or 6 innings. But yet, if you're trying to get a spot on this team and not have the Minnesota nice media tear you down, then go out and perform. But I didn't see that. And Moron is another one. I'm sorry, he is.
Yeah. No, and I tweeted it out last night as I still can't believe he's still on this team. I don't understand why he's not in AAA right now. The Twins have called up Brock Stewart. They DFA'd Trevor McGill.
Who's Brock Stewart?
So Brock Stewart has been in the league for a little bit with the Dodgers, and he is now playing. He was pitching really well in AAA. They selected his contract this morning. They DFA'd Trevor McGill, who was absolutely terrible last year. The year before that, he was absolutely terrible in AAA too. But they have brought up Brock Stewart. I believe he replaces Bailey Ober just to keep arms fresh.
They sent Bailey down.
And they've been doing this carousel. Yeah, and they've been doing this carousel of arms to keep arms fresh, which is fine. But you've got 2 guys in there, Emilio Pagan and Giovanni Moran, who I don't ever want to see them pitch. I would rather bring up someone from AAA. Give me Randy Dobnak. Give me Jose De Leon. Give me Brent Hedrick. You know, give me these guys who I'm give them some shots, because Pagan and Moran have gotten their shots and they suck. Why are we keeping guys that suck on our team?
I agree. And all right, we'll get it. I feel bad about Bailey Ober because there's just not a spot for him. Like, I know that Maeda, they checked it out and he's ready to go. He's not going to miss a start, where I thought maybe he was going to miss 2 months after that, but his arm feels good. Right now, there's just not a spot for Bailey Ober, and Ober pitched a hell of a game the other day, and a lot of folks were saying, well, maybe he should have, because of the spring training that he had, he should have a roster spot, but where are you going to put him? I think it's a nice luxury to have if you're a Twins fan, that you've got 6 possible starters. But I just feel bad that he's not able, because I think he wants to obviously be at this level, and he's pitched well for us.
Yes, and I'm glad though that they're not sitting him in the bullpen, because it's a spot that he's struggled in previously. So I'm glad that they're not trying to make him a reliever, because he's a good starter. I think that if they were to make him a reliever, you know, let's say Maeda gets hurt again, and then it's like, hey, Ober, can you try going back and starting again? And that's
is Ober like 6'6"? He's tall, isn't he?
That guy, he is like 6'9". Like, he is
8 or 6'9", right? Yeah, it's. Oh, go ahead.
It's huge.
Yeah. Okay.
No, yeah.
So you were talking Sonny Gray, and you were talking about CY Young Canidate. Well, right now, obviously things are going to change, but his ERA is ridiculous right now. And the thing I love about Sonny Gray, and I was never a pitcher, so you can disagree with me. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. Sonny Gray. His slider right now is ridiculous. Okay. And the other thing is his fastball is doing what it's supposed to do. And those two pitches alone, I think, is the reason why his ERA is what is like 0.062 or something like that.
0.62, the lowest ERA in the MLB currently.
Right. And hadn't even come close to losing the game. You go back now with Lopez, boy, his record does not mirror the kind of starts that he's given us. And I think that goes back with the run support that he's gotten. He looked terrible. Everyone says, okay, he's Caribbean, he's Miami, so he can't pitch in cold weather. But I feel bad because I think Lopez, to me, I really get excited when I see Lopez is on the mound. But Sonny Gray is it's hard to say that he can't be the ace of the staff right now.
No, and I think that's the fun part about Sonny Gray too, is the thing that I appreciate about him the most is that he's a gamer. He's a grinder, right? Like he grinds through innings. He grinds through appearances. Like the guy freaking threw up right before the game, his last start, comes in, throws 5 shutout innings, and he might throw a lot of pitches, but he's trying to give you 7 or 8 innings every time.
Did you see his reaction when he struck out the guy to end the 7th yesterday?
No.
So he was just Mr. Yeah. And I think there were 2 reasons why. Number one, I just like to see that emotion from any Twins player. That's why I'm not a big Joe Mauer fan. But number 2, there was question about if Rocco was going to leave him in. And we talked about this before as well. And Rocco went start, which he should have. And he ended up getting the strikeout, and just the intensity that he had. I don't think that you've seen that a lot from many Twins players. And so, man, I'm going to ride that guy as long as we can, for sure.
Oh yeah. And I think the fun part that what you mentioned was, it's you get excited when you see Pablo Lopez, you get excited when you see Sonny Gray, but also the guy going tonight, you get excited when you see Joe Ryan on the mound. Like
dude,
it is
dude is a stud. And he was my first pick at being the ace of the staff and he's so young. Like you're looking at a rotation that at least we could have for 2 years, right? Don't you think?
Well, yeah. And now the hard part is Sonny Gray and Tyler Mahle are free agents after this season.
But after Sonny wins the Cy Young, they're going to lock him up, man. Like,
that's what people are asking is, the guy's 35, so he's getting there. And he's after this season, he's going to want some money.
Yeah.
So you got guys in AAA like Bailey Ober and Louis Varland. So I don't know if there's extension talks. I would be definitely open to a 2 or 3 year deal, I think, for the right price. But
if he's in the lines of a Cy Young this year, and obviously it's April, folks, so don't remember I'm Mr. Negative, so I shouldn't be talking about stuff like that. Obviously it's early, but if he were to have something like a 15-5 year and was in the race for the Cy Young, don't you think that the Twins would honestly take a look at re-signing him?
Oh, absolutely. But you also need to I think the chances go down of re-signing him if it passes the trade deadline, because I believe you can't extend anyone after that. So then you're looking at a bidding war, and when if the Twins really won bidding wars? So I think you need to look at.
Yeah, but if you win a World Series, then he's going to want to be here. So that's all we got to do is just win the World Series, and then he'll.
There you go. There you go. But yeah, I think if I'm the Twins, I definitely look at extending him. But it's just we can talk about it every episode because the Twins have never had a rotation like this, and you can just it's so exciting to talk about. When have you ever said this Twins team is great, the pitching keeps you in it, the offense is shaky though? It's always the opposite.
Right. And that was just it. I was thinking about this earlier today when talking about the Yankees series, and when you're throwing guys like Dylan Bundy, is Dylan Bundy still in the game? Is he pitching anymore?
I don't think so.
Yeah, he was what was he, a 2 or 3 guy last year?
3 or 4.
Okay. So my point.
Yeah.
You never had, even in the Bomba squad days, you were like, okay, we're going to put up 10 runs and maybe hit 4 home runs in the game, maybe 5. But you knew that our pitching staff was going to give up 13 runs. So it didn't matter. Think about the old days. Yeah, maybe before your time. No, you're old enough to know. When you're throwing guys like Kyle Gibson, who I think is, what is he, 3-0 right now?
For the Orioles.
For the Orioles, I was going to get to that because I couldn't believe, I looked at the standings today and I was like, wait, the Orioles won 7 in a row. Like, okay. But at the time, Kyle Gibson was not a guy that was going to give you a chance. He was going to give up 3 or 4 runs against the Yankees, maybe 6. And so it didn't matter what you had at the plate for the Twins because you just knew. And then even if it got to the bullpen, you knew that the Yankees own our bullpen every single time we play them. So it's been a little different, and it's been now I want to bring this up because I want you to set it up so that everyone knows why you and I have such a loving for this. So all I'm going to say is I'm going to set the guy up, and then I want you to explain in its entirety why it means something from us from what we saw in Kansas City, okay? So we'll see what happens here. Joey fucking Gallo. Sorry, Ron.
I don't know if I should bleep that one. I might keep that one in
keep
there.
it in. I'm sorry, Ron. It had to be said, though.
No, so the whole idea behind JFG is what I want to get started for this guy, JFG, Joey fucking Gallo, because this man has – so in Kansas City, there was a lot of question behind Joey Gallo. He's coming off a terrible year with the Yankees and the Dodgers, and you didn't know what you would get on a Minnesota Twins team. We go to Kansas City, and the guy absolutely rakes. He has 2 homers.
No, hold on, though. Before that, hold on. The first guys that we met at the ballpark, because your mom always gives me a hard time. She's like, just once. I'd like to go somewhere where you don't talk to strangers more than you talk to me, okay? Who are the first guys we met at the ballpark, though? The guys sitting in front of us. And what were they saying?
The Puerto Ricans.
Yes.
The Puerto Ricans talking about how now Yankee fans.
They were Yankees fans, right? Supposedly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not a fan of Joey Gallo, as I'm pretty sure every Yankees fan or anyone in New York was. So talking terrible stuff on Joey Gallo, and we always told him, hey, let's see. Let's just see. And the guy hits 2 homers.
Yeah, but not the day that those guys were there. I think he had 2 strikeouts the day we were there. He was 0 for the season at that point because it was game 2 of the series. Mm-hmm. And then in game 3, he hit 2 bombs, and those guys weren't there.
Yep. And ever since then, he's been absolutely raking. The guy has 6 homers in 13 games this year. It took Aaron Judge 23 games to do that. So, I mean, he's already on a great pace. The guy's hitting like 250.
And he was hurt. He missed some games too.
That's what I'm saying. 13 games. Right. The guy has 6 homers. The homer he hit last night, an absolute no-doubter, dead center field. And every time he hits a homer, we text each other, Joey fucking Gallo.
Joey fucking Gallo. And here's the thing. I love how big of a deal, because Bremer made a big deal about it last night. And, of course, Smalley, but I don't really listen to that. But anyway, and then I read it in the paper this morning. The fact that he hit that ball that hard on a cold night tells you about his strength. But this is the thing that, and I want you to talk a little bit about it if you can, because I'm shocked at it. Every time I see it, I go, there's no way. Talk about height. Every time this guy connects on a home run ball, his front foot is at the very top, like hitting the chalk at the top of the batter's box. And his back foot is all the way back, hitting the back. Have you ever seen a stride like that long, where his feet are touching both of the ends of the box? It's incredible.
He's completely open stance, uses his hips well. His stride is phenomenal, but he generates so much power with his stride. And I think that's why he maybe had some issues in the past was just, I mean, it's a tough stance. But for a guy like him, I mean, when he connects with that ball is going to go far. It reminds me a lot of Jim Thome of now his stance was a little more closed and whatnot, but big boys that just when they connect, man, it's gonna go far. And the fun thing about Joey Gallo, when we look at like a guy like Jim Thome, is Joey Gallo can play the field and he can run too.
He's a great athlete.
So
he's got speed, and he's not a bad defensively. He is not bad at all. Like, we were thinking we were going to see him in left a majority of the time, right? Not at first or DHing, because that's how good he is or how athletic he is.
And I like him at first because when you think about, now I didn't play the infield, I played first for when I was younger. But when you think about a target, when you're throwing, a big, tall guy like Joey Gallo has to be a luxury, because if you remember, who was your first baseman for the majority of the season last year?
Luis Arraez.
Mr. 5'9", Luis Arraez,
and that's only because he could play the infield, right? Like they had to put him at first so they didn't DH him every day.
Exactly, and that is the luxury of this team, which is so fun. Is just the switchability, because if you had to, Joey Gallo could go out and right or could go out and left, but Joey Gallo can steal. He's probably not going to steal any bags, but the guy can run, and he's an athlete, and that's what's super cool. So
do you think? He was in LA and New York, correct? I mean, he was in Texas, but everybody forgets about. I mean, everyone forgets about their times in Texas. Would you say that? Obviously, it's early. It's April. So you can't say, but do you think that, we've used that term before, you just needed a change of scenery, and that's why you're doing so great. But we also talked about big markets, LA, New York, people not being very nice there. Is that a fact? Do you think that that's one of the factors with Joey Gallo, is that he's comfortable here?
I think so. I think I just think about all the hits he took in New York and LA, that those big markets,
and rightfully so. I mean, they weren't making stuff up.
No, but the constant attention he was getting, come to Minnesota, the Minnesota Nice, and I think it let him just focus on baseball and the simple stuff, right? And I think change of scenery is an interesting thing, because half the time it works, half the time it doesn't. But I think when you were looking at this guy's splits and this guy's talent, like it made sense. I think if he would have went to another big market, it would have been a little bit of the same Joey Gallo from New York. But I think that sometimes a small Minnesota market team changes things, and I think we've seen that with players before too. Not that it works all the time, but I do think Minnesota is quite the team for reclamation projects, and sometimes it works out and it's fun to watch.
How about Polanco? He didn't look like he missed a beat being injured. Like, you always worry about guys that have been injured, especially to start the season. And I think you want to be slow in, you don't want to play him every day to start out, but man, he don't look like he missed a beat, does he? Like, one of the most consistent players we had for the last 4 years, but
and you forget about him. Like, when he was hurt, I mean, now I think he was a big reason why the Twins faltered in September last year, but
absolutely,
the guy, like, you just forget about what he brings. And there's times too when you're like, oh, the Twins have a lot of infield talent. Maybe you look at trading Polanco for whatever, but you just, like, when he plays, you forget how much he brings to this team. I mean, defensively, he's pretty average, but I mean, the offense is what this team needs, and it couldn't have come at a better time, because I mean, while yes, Julian had to be sent down, who he can hit the ball, but he's still a rookie, and you're going to go through those growing pains. I still like Polanco up here, especially with the switch. He's a switch hitter. So,
but I kind of, now I know you can't, because Castro what he can do it all. He can play outfield, he can play infield, he can pitch. Ooh. When our bullpen can't. I think timing is the deal. Julian's going to get his chance. I just and I don't like Canadians very much, but I do like this guy on the team. But I understand it's a numbers game and that kind of, and you've got a bigger fish to fry when Royce comes back, don't you think? Because then you're really going to have to crunch the numbers and go who's here and who's not.
Well, not only that, but guess who's killing it at AAA right now on his rehab assignment? Alex Kirilloff.
I know.
So
once again, wonderful problems to have as a Minnesota Twins fan.
Absolutely.
I love it. Because we never have who are we going to put in? Right? We never have these. It's always Kyle Garlick is our fourth outfielder. No, this time we actually got a lot of guys who I think can contribute to this team, right?
Yeah. Now, my final question here, just because we're running up some time here.
I know there's so much to talk about.
As of right now, besides the pitchers, let's go. Well, no, you can do a pitcher. MVP of the team right now.
Right now? That's tough because I never like giving an MVP to a pitcher. I don't.
Okay.
But I would say Sonny Gray right now.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because he's the only guy who has been consistent every single time. Now, you got a guy that only shows up for once every 5 games, but he's been consistent every single time that he's taken the mound. Joe Ryan has too, but Sonny Gray's numbers are way, way more impressive than anybody else. Don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
If I was going to go position player, geez, that's tough, man. You know what? You're going to think I'm nuts on this, but I'd say Michael A. Taylor.
That was my pick.
My MVP right now as far as a position player.
That was my pick, and I just wanted to see if you would say that because Michael A. Taylor, man, the offense is there surprisingly.
Right, and defensively, it's not even a question. Hands down, right? Because everyone else has been so inconsistent. You knew I was that was a slow pitch softball that you threw out there, man.
So I guess I'm curious is like Michael A has been in the game for a while. Where is it just because he's been on some smaller market teams or why hasn't he?
He won a World Series with Washington, right?
And then, I think so, yeah.
Yes, he did. And then he went to Kansas City for what, like a year, but still won a Gold Glove there. That was great that he was able to get out. But I don't know. But I don't think Michael A. Taylor is a kind of guy as far as a center fielder that you say, I'm going to put my eggs in that guy's basket right now. Now think about it. If Buxton was what he's supposed to be, Taylor wouldn't get any kind of consideration about playing center field. So where would you play him? With Larnick and what Kepler I know still has to play. Where would you put Taylor? DH? Where would you put him?
He's your backup. But I do think if Buxton is what he was supposed to be, I don't think Michael Taylor is on the team. I think he was the Buxton insurance.
Well, right. They brought him in for sure, basically to tell all Twins fans that Buxton probably wasn't going to play a lot of center field. I don't care. I know it's only April, but do you see when? Okay, you want predictions? Let's talk about this. When do you see Byron Buxton playing a center field for the Minnesota Twins?
Mid-May.
Really?
Once it gets
April's almost over, Noah. Sorry.
Yep. Now here's the thing. If I understand he's an unreal defensive talent.
Unreal.
I don't want to take Michael out of the lineup.
Okay. But then that's also Rocco's deal. Like, well, all I know is I get to pencil his name in every game. And yeah, because he bats once every 3 innings. That's not what you're paying him for, though. And I'm sorry I keep harping on this, but you have one of we're not talking about like, oh, everybody's kind of this way. That Buxton's up here, Noah, as far as what he does in center field. And so I can't get past that. I hear what you're saying about Taylor, but that's a tough one, man. I don't know. Now I go back and forth, and that's why I like talking to you. But that is a really, really sticky wicket right there. Okay, well, shoot. I had like 5 other things that I want to talk. Okay, one last thing before we go then, because I guess we're going to go with Rosin and Max Scherzer getting suspended for 10 games after Herman can do whatever the he wants to do. And I wanted to get into that about baseball rules. We got to hold that, though, because it'll still be relevant because I believe Scherzer got suspended for 10 games. So it's still something we can talk about when he makes his first start back. My last question to you, when are we going to get some guests on the show? I've got folks talking about guests, this and that. I want to be a part of this. And I don't have a problem. I'm a selfish guy. I like to talk more than you and everyone else. But I'm cool with guests. Are we thinking about guests in the future or what?
I think, yeah, absolutely. I think this show is made for just fans to talk sports, and that's exactly what we want to do. We want to hear other people's opinions, so you don't just have to listen to us, but the sooner the better. So for anyone interested, let us know. We will give you a time frame, and I think we will make it happen.
And I will say this, okay? I'm going to challenge folks, because some have gotten a hold of me via my phone. Some have done it on Facebook. I don't see all the other, I don't know what TikTok is or that kind of stuff. But a lot of people have contacted me about wanting. I'm going to say this, man. Contact our show and give us some kind of reason why you need to talk on the show. Okay, because I don't want to talk about, do you like blue cotton candy versus pink cotton candy? I can prove that blue is better. I want to know, is there something that you really want to talk about? And that's what I would say, because I think it's guest time. I think eventually we're going to get to the time when we could maybe even get a LaTroy Hawkins on our show to talk with us. I would love something like that. But you're right, Noah. I mean, this is the whole point of the show to be named later when it was on television was an opportunity for the fans, not Dan Barrero or Mark Rosen, to say what we think we want them to say for us. This is an opportunity. This is a venue where you can voice your own opinion. And I think it's time that we get some other folks talking shit,
Yep. I love it. And, you've had some people on your show from the past that I'm going to reach out to. So I'm hoping we can get some of those people on there. That means you, Jim Peterson. But so we'll see what we can do.
I'm more of a fan of Leah B. Olson these days, but
okay.
If we could get either one, that'd be great. So I like that. I like the Jim Peterson. I saw him maybe 2 years ago at a Vikings game, and you can see the motherfucker. Sorry, you can see the guy coming from halfway across the stadium, and immediately he's like, "Hey, Johnny, how you doing?" So, let's do that. I am friends with him on Facebook. I don't know what that means, but season going to be over after tonight, guys. Sorry, but he might have some time. I don't know.
All right, love it.
All right, man. Well, folks, thanks those that have joined us tonight. Appreciate it. Love talking with my nephew Noah Stoerzinger. This has been the Show to Be Named Later podcast. I'm Jonny Voss. Noah, signing it off for us, buddy.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching.